Hello everyone, and welcome to our Spiritist Psychology Study Group, The Inner Journey, Finding Your True Self. Here we will explore life's big question and connect with others on the path of self-discovery, guided by the teachings of Joanna de Angelis. This evening, Anahy will delve into the book Personal Triumph by Joanna de Angelis, Chapter 9, The Existential Meaning. We will have time for your questions and feel free to contribute with your insights, reflections, and questions. I now hand it over to Dr. Anahy Fonseca.
So, hello everyone. I will start sharing the PowerPoint. Okay. Uh, Oops. Just a second. I think it's a lot of time without meeting. Something happened here. I'll just stop sharing and try again. Okay. Should take only 1 minute. Is that okay, Fabrizio? Yeah,
Yes,
full screen.
yes, full screen.
All right, so here we go. We have a lot to cover, and Fabrizio has put in the WhatsApp group the beautiful chapter that Sylvia, Bob, and other people helped to translate to English. So, welcome everyone again. This is as Fabrizio said, the study of Joanna's beautiful book, Personal Triumph. And the chapter is chapter 9, The Existential Meaning. So, Joanna says that this is a summary, and we are going to stop in the middle as we planned before, so that we can exchange ideas and come back to the PowerPoint presentation, okay? And then discuss a little more in the end. So that in the introduction of this chapter, Joanna says that the hedonistic view of human existence has led multitudes into the delusions of pleasure in a completely mistaken interpretation of the reality of being. I just wanted to tell you people that she wrote this book, Personal Triumph, from her complete work. It was this book is was psychographed by Divaldo Franco in the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so you are going to see how it is very, very up to date. And then she says the discovery of life's meaning is of great significance, for it gives purpose to struggle and to the challenges that frequently arise, inviting the individual to progress and to inner growth. Okay, the existential sense is a form of religiosity that must carry a profound motivational meaning so that the individual does not falter in their evolutionary endeavors. I just wanted to point out because this is an ongoing study and we had like a month of between our last meeting and this meeting, and many of you have seen that I was at Harvard Medical School, and we were discussing in the sixth global meeting of religiosity, spirituality, and mental health exactly this kind of issues that John is bringing to us. Unfortunately, as I told you guys, it's very up to date, 26 years more or less since Joanna and Divaldo psychographed Joanna in this book, Personal Triumph. And we were discussing at Harvard the lack of meaning nowadays okay, of many, many people around the globe, the lack of identity, and also the loneliness that people are. In spite of all the technology, all the social medias, so the loneliness that many, many people are suffering. We can discuss this later. I just wanted you to have an idea how up to date the mentor, and her teachings are, okay? So Joanna says that it is common to believe in merely material meanings as the ultimate goals of all human activity. Certainly, the attainment of immediate values generates inner incentives, encouraging the continuation of efforts and sustaining them with optimism. However, it is those subjective ones, not always recognizable by conventional form and characteristics, which awaken and inspire the continuation of every sacrifice. So we must, when we are reading a spiritual teacher, a light teacher such as Joanna, we must pay attention to the words that she uses or the teacher uses, okay? And remember, I just brought to you, maybe in other meetings we have already talked about that, but the etymological origin of the word sacrifice. So the word sacrifice originates from the Latin word sacrificium. And an etymological breakdown from Britannia Encyclopedia, the Latin noun sacrificium is a compound word combining two distinct roots. Sacer, meaning sacred, holy, or set apart from the secular or profane, and facere, meaning to make or to do. So put together, the literal translation of the origin is to make sacred. So I think this is very important because nowadays, if we talk about sacrifice, it gets a very negative meaning for many people. Why am I going to sacrifice anything? What is sacrifice? Does that mean suffering, right? And remember, let's go back. Joanna says that this subjective, as she says, values, because the objective values that she's talking about, the goals that we all look for, it's ultimately nowadays material ones, okay? To have possessions, to have material things, to be able to do whatever I want to do, right? In terms of, material pleasures. And Joanna is saying that actually the subjective values, not always recognizable by conventional form and characteristics, are the ones that awaken and inspire the continuation of every sacrifice. So, what sacrifice is Joanna talking about? What sacrifices do we have to do in this world of ours, in our lives? So we are going to be talking about that, right? But remember about the origin of the word, that it's literally to make sacred. What are we? What do we want to make sacred? What is to make sacred our lives? So let's go on. So Joanna says some people, in a pessimistic manner, claim that human life is a fruitless endeavor in which pain and unsettling transformations play significant roles. Others believe that the boredom and weariness that take hold of individuals are responsible for the absence of genuine goals, since the human being is merely a thinking animal. Nevertheless, beauty, art, culture, science, solidarity, humanitarian feelings, and religious faith reveal that the human being is a tireless conqueror, advancing with determination in pursuit of the end of which he longs to make sacred. Let's go. So, what is the why we are this tireless? John is talking to us that we are these tireless conquerors, advancing with determination in pursuit of the end for which we all long. Which end is this? She says that if one does not nurture a religious idea, a spiritual idea, she's not talking about the classical way, and for those who have read the text previously that Fabricio put in the WhatsApp group, when Joanna talks about religion in this text, I want to clarify that she's talking about also the origin of the word to religere in Latin, to reconnect, not only in religio, right? So it is to search for the sacred in our lives. That many religions that are serious and that really follow this path, they are like offering a way for people, if people connect to this or that religion, to reconnect to with the sacred in their lives, right? Through rituals and religious texts and things like that. But also, as Jung says, religion, so there is the etymology of the word also, it comes also for religere, that it's to reconnect both in a sense with what it's outside in terms that we still understand it outside of us, and in the past they understood pretty much the higher consciousness, the source or God, if you will, as something outside of ourselves. So they would use mankind would use different kinds of religions to try to reconnect with the source, with the sacred that they understood or were taught that was outside of them. But also, and I think Jung means pretty much this, and also Joanna in this text is talking about that. The Heligeri, so to reconnect with the sacred within myself, within all of us, where the kingdom is, right? Because we are all sparkles, let's say, of this beautiful, unimaginable light that it's the source or God. Okay? So just to make clear that when John is talking about religions, she's talking about and 20 and more years ago, she was already talking what we are all studying, the ones that are of us, all of us that are studying psychology and psychiatry, the development of spirituality within all of us, right? And this development and this search for meaning in our lives and this connection with something that is transcendent to our egos and the day by day reality. Okay, and we know now that this brings not only meaning to our lives but health. But let's go back to the test. So Joanna is saying if one does not nurture a religious or spiritual ideal, one becomes detached from the fulcrum that generates life. It's another way that Joanna is talking about the source, about God. The human spirit is the highest climax of anthropo-socio-psychological evolution on earth. However, it does not constitute the final stage of this process. for new opportunities for investment are either offered or embraced, and as certain cycles of achievement and new horizons open before all of us, inviting further growth and fulfillment. So, evolution is always happening. Many spiritual authors talk about that, as Joanna is talking, and Jung would say the sacred is always evolving and making itself known within us, within the psyche, and within our lives. So the human being, however, is a bundle of emotions yet to be unraveled and cultivated in such a way as to allow inner states of well being and fulfillment that are independent of things and places, circumstances, and possessions. This is not a philosophical or theoretical matter, Joanna says, but an existential reality in which every individual experiences inner values that may encourage self knowledge or hinder their extra physical perceptions. I think this is very, very important because if we are still, and we are going to see more about that, that Jonah talks in this chapter, if we are educated to, to stay in only the material reality, of course, our egos develop to adapt to this material reality that we are in. For now, our spirit is incarnated in the matter, as spiritist knowledge tells us, and many other spiritual traditions, to have an experience, to learn, to evolve, right? So, and here we have this bundle of emotions, as Joanna says, that need to be unraveled and cultivated, but in such a way that takes us in the direction of inner states of well being and fulfillment, independently of things and places, circumstances, and possessions. So here, Joanna is calling us to pay attention to our ultimate reality as spirits in a journey of self discovery and evolution of consciousness, okay? And she says that this is not a philosophical or theoretical matter, but an existential reality. Okay, this is our ultimate reality in which all of us and every individual experiences inner values that may encourage self knowledge or hinder their extra physical perceptions. So, here I think it's very important to understand we are studying this. I think many of you know that, and at Harvard, I presented research that I'm part of about anomalous experiences, about experiences of the sacred, spiritual experiences that have all everything to do with extra physical perceptions. So, and Jung will say that it doesn't matter if the experience that the person is having is real for, or not, in the sense can be proved by others. What matters is the psychological effect, and that if the person experiences some connection with this, with something transcendent, let's say, it's a Jung says that it's a psychic reality. It's a reality for the psyche, for the soul. So we should pay attention to the person who is having the experience, in the circumstances that the person is having the experience, what this experience means to the person person's individuation process, evolution of consciousness. You see how complex is this? And if we don't do that with ourselves and with others, especially people that deal with some kind of psychotherapeutic process, or that even need psychotherapeutic intervention, for instance, and we stay only in what is material and that I can prove with my senses, for instance, without considering the meaning of the experience, then what happens, and even if I educate myself, I let myself be educated, and others educate others to only stay in this material understanding of the world, all our inner values, everything that it's the richness of the psyche, because we are not only our egos, we are much more than that. In Jung, for Jung, for instance, and his complex psychology, and certainly for Joanna, who is telling us what Jung's self means. And we are going to be seeing that, but many of you have already watched other encounters or being present here with us, learning about that. And we know that Joanna says that Jung's self, capital S, is our spirit, but we are going to be seeing more of that. So Joanna says that this is not a philosophical or theoretical matter, but an existential reality. And each of our individual experiences, right? In every individual experiences, inner values that may we all have inner values that may encourage self-knowledge. Or if we don't develop these inner values that John is talking about, the subjective one, remember? So we can hinder our extra physical perceptions, because of course we're going to ignore that our psyche is connected also to the transcendent dimensions, as Jung said, called the collective unconscious, the transpersonal dimension of the psyche, where we are all interconnected. But let's go a little further. So Joanna says that the atavisms that remain within the being from our past experiences, right? Keeping it bound to the primary level of behavioral reactions have rendered existence tumultuous and at times almost unbearable, with the agonies of wars of every kind multiplying both within and around it. Unfortunately, to this day, we still have many people around the globe with these atavisms, right? That feel each other, each human being in the planet, like separate from culture and from different countries and this and that, different perspectives of the world, forgetting that we are all one, part of a cosmos, and like humankind, brothers and sisters in a spiritual dimension, and that we are here separate only for a short period of time for an experience and for a learning process of the spirit. Okay? So Joanna says that likewise, philosophical, ethical, moral, religious, and humanitarian proposals have been working to transform this lamentable situation. So we have light and darkness still in our duality, in our dual world. The effort to discover existential meaning must be continuous, for its absence, its lack of understanding, can give rise to inner disturbances that lead to psychoneurotic process. This is very important because we are always searching for what makes us so, mentally ill, not only mentally, but even our bodies, because they filter everything that we feel, that we think, and the way do we act. We know that, of course, there is a correspondence because we are in a body, we have a physiology, right? We have a brain. So, of course, but as Spiritist knowledge says, illnesses start in the soul, right? And not only the soul here incarnated, but the part of the soul that has the atavisms, as Jonah says, our ancient and past experiences in many, many different lives that we have not yet overcome, we have not yet integrated. Okay? So Jonas says that the effort to discover existential meaning must be continuous, okay? Because its lack of its absence and its lack of understanding can give rise to inner disturbances. Because of course the atavisms will go on and will manifest in our lives, creating or bringing forth a psychoneurotic process when we get stuck in suffering and conflict. Intelligent, lucid, stoic people, financially well off and loved, when they lose the meaning of life and fall into this existential void, one that religion has always sought to fill by offering transpersonal goals. Religion here as spirituality, as the religions that would help people to develop, right, and to make contact with these transpersonal goals. So many people that are very successful in the world, in this world of ours, but fall into this existential void, they begin to feel useless and develop neurotic disorders that must be overcome by rediscovering life's purpose, the value of living, and the immense possibilities within their reach to become fulfilled and truly happy. Joanna says that they are therefore subjective values, these values, such as prayer, meditation, reflection, serenity, and the commitment to personal renewal, which are able to provide emotional fulfillment, really emotional fulfillment, restructuring the individual in relation to human existence. So, Joanna is showing us the path for us to really get in contact with our emotions, to understand them, to look the origin. Are they coming from atavisms? Are they bringing me peace? Are they showing me some shadow that I have to integrate? But I can only do this inner journey that we're talking about if I do some kind of, inner silence, let's say. If I really try to look inside myself and not outside myself. And we do this through prayer, meditations, reflections, study groups such as this, right, where we can be serene and commitment to personal renewal. And then we can, all these techniques or ways, let's say, can provide emotional fulfillment and restructure our, relation to human experience, existence, sorry. Now I brought to you, I think we should stop a little bit. We had planned to stop in the middle, right, Fabricio, so that we could exchange ideas. And for this purpose, with everything that we have talked about up till now, the introduction, I brought to you question 122 from the Spirit's book, where Kardec asked the spirits, at their origin, How are spirits free to choose between good and evil when they are not self aware? Is there some inner principle or tendency that leads them more toward one side than the other? And of course, Kardec's asking the spirits in the middle, kind of the middle of 19th century. So let's think about good and evil here also. As Joanna is talking to us, the subjective values of light and darkness, for instance, within ourselves, of emotions that destabilized us, that we all know: jealousy, fear, envy, rage, things like that, and emotions that bring forth, inner peace. And when we are really happy with with ourselves, with others, compassion, the feeling of compassion, the feeling of inner peace, for instance, right? The happiness that comes from something within that we cannot even explain. So let's think about expand a little, as Kardec says, because he says that the Spiritist knowledge is based in three points: the religion aspect, but it's this reconnection aspect involved in religion, philosophy, so always having the right that it's from all of us, because we are the intelligent principle of creation. So the right to ask questions, to wonder about things, that philosophy, and the right to observe and learn with what we observe through rational thinking, through our knowledge of our feelings that are not only emotions, but feelings that bring also memories of what we have already learned. So, religion, religiary, reconnection, philosophy, questioning, and science, observing and learning, thinking about things. So let's think about this question, expand to our days, okay? And is there some inner principle, Kardec asks the spirits, inner principle or tendency that leads them, the spirits, all of us, more toward one side than the other, toward light or toward darkness, for instance? And the Spirit says, free will develops as the Spirit acquires self awareness. There would be no actual choice if it were made by a cause extraneous to the Spirit's will. The cause is not within the Spirit, but outside, in the influences to which it yields in virtue of its free will. This is the great symbol, people, of the fall of humankind and original sin. Sin as original sin, okay? That how they understood original sin, or was taught to us for some through some religions. Some yielded to temptation, others resisted it. So some were convinced that a thing outside of them, as Jonah was talking about, circumstances and different values, material, for instance, values that were taught to us. Some yielded to this kind of temptation, others resisted it. Okay, so I will stop sharing now so that we can have some time as we plan to talk a little and exchange ideas. Right, Fabrizio?
Yeah. So, anyone has got any insights or reflections to share with us at this moment? Tiago, over to you.
Hello, guys. Teacher, I have a question. Um, you said that in some like rich people or people that only focuses in material aspects of life, illnesses can develop, right? Like when there's no intrinsic motivation or um, a, a bigger knowledge about the human life. And I was thinking, like, do you think that when we think about um, psychic diseases like besides anxiety, depression, some like personality disorders that people develop in adolescence, early adulthood, uh, any kinds of psychic diseases. Um, do you think that if we educate like children about this spirit reality, about dealing with emotions and understanding sacrifices, this kind of diseases can be prevented?
Yes, thank you, Thiago. Yes, I do think so. And in the text, I think Joanna talks a little bit about that. And I think it's a great question for us to think about how we are teaching our youngsters, the children, adolescents, because, for instance, we have researches that have researched a lot about past lives in children that remember past lives, right? And what happens is that, and Spiritist knowledge brings this also. Many authors, spiritual authors, talk about that, that until more or less 7 years of age, around 6, 7 years of age, the child has a lot of connection to the spiritual realms, right? Because actually, if we think about the brain and education, right, of course, the child has not at this point, early childhood, it's the child has not yet the complex thinking. Okay, so it is pretty much learning about the world. The ego is developing, right? So of course the self, Jung says that the self is there from, of course, is our spirit, as Joanna said. So is there previous to conception, let's say. So the baby, the self is active, and in early childhood, the self is always there. So if the child says has some past life's memory, usually in our culture in Western countries, even to this day, people, for instance, will take fathers and mothers will take to the psychiatrist or the psychologist. Say, oh, something is happening here. My child is saying that I'm not the mother. No, I want that other mother or something like that. Can you imagine that? So, but if I have knowledge that the spirit is there, right? I could, for instance, let's get this example. I could, for instance, talk to my child and say, "Oh, yes, which mother are you talking about? Oh, the one from that life where this and that." And then I could explain, "Oh, it's okay because we have many mothers, and now I'm your mother, but we all love each other." For instance, things like that. And a mother always love he's her child, and she will be with you, but now I am with you. I'm thinking now, and I know Sylvia knows a lot about that. I'm thinking of Chico Xavier, for instance, because when he was six, I think 6 years of age, he lost his mother, or even before, I can remember very well. But the mother, he was taken to a godmother, I think, who would punish him. It was a very evil person, or it was obsessed, I don't know, by. It is said that she was, of course, with evil, what we call evil diseased or sick spirits, right? And she would punish Chico Xavier, right? And what happened for no reason at all. And he would cry, and his mother would appear to him in spirit. And he would say, "Oh, I want to go with you." And she said, "No, you have to be here. Everything will pass," and this and that. And then suddenly he's taken out of the hands of that godmother because his father marries again, and he says it was an angel because the woman asks the husband to bring all the other all the children of the previous wife, his previous wife, to come and live with them again. So she kind of saves Chico's early life. I don't know, Tiago, if it were not for her, for his, he considered her the a second mother, let's say, another mother, a guardian angel. I don't know if she would, for instance, could not develop let's say, a disorder of, mentally get mentally ill or a psychic disorder because the child is very the ego, let's say, it's very fragile in the first childhood. So, of course, he was Chico Xavier. He had a mission and he was taking care. Everything that happened had a purpose in his life. But can you imagine many, many children around the globe that have the knowledge, and we know they are arriving to help us, these new generations, because of the transition of spiritual transition that we are all going through on earth and development of consciousness. So imagine if we fathers and mothers don't realize and responsible adults that we have a responsibility with the egos of this next generation. It's in Genesis by Allan Kardec, the next generation. So we have a responsibility if we don't educate the ego, to help the self to manifest. And John is going to talk more about that. We are losing a generation maybe and making them sick. I agree with you. I totally agree. I think, thanks for your question, Thiago. Seva, another hand up.
Sabrina, over to you.
Um, I was just preparing the summary for the book, Viktor Frank, the Man Search for Meaning,
Um,
and
Sabrina, your audio is very shuffled. We cannot
uh,
hear you clearly.
I was talking about the book Man Search for Meaning by Viktor Frank, and it reminds everything what we've been talking about. He developed this therapy, logotherapy, which in
Hmm.
nutshell is basically searching for meaning. So without being religious, because in psychology, in psychiatry, so now it's getting better, but the whole problem was always that the spiritual things were too religious, and that's why it wasn't taken seriously. It's changing now. I just want to add that if Ayana agree with me, if his book and this logotherapy is also what Joanna was trying to say.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree. I totally agree. It's the same thing. It's just using different perspectives, but it's the same teachings. I totally agree. Because Joanna, as I told you, Joanna was talking about religions 25 years ago that developed the psychograph, the book, but actually she was talking about spirituality and the search for meaning, as Viktor Frankl says, is a spirituality. Even for us nowadays, in research, for research purposes, it's one of the definitions of spirituality. Thank you so much. I don't know if Fabricio wants to add something.
Um, I think Joanna, in one of her books, she does mention about Viktor Frank, and she does mention about the existentialism that he brings up on his theories.
Yeah, she does.
Nadia?
Yeah, I'm just going to mention that, like, I'm not very knowledgeable of Viktor Frankl, but I really did like his book, Search for Meaning. However, I thought it was very challenging, and Joanna does cite, I think, in a couple books, either directly or indirectly. But I think it was so challenging for him not having the reincarnation as a perspective, right? So Joanna expands, but so he had to deal with search for meaning now, as your life is today is very challenging. And probably he would be very helpful if you are dealing with someone who does not have the knowledge of spiritism, because you can't just say, oh, have hope, or in the future, or in the next life, or where we are going towards, because they don't have that knowledge. And I and another thing that I took from Tiago's question about children and learning. Right now, I'm very involved with like the youth movement here in the U.S., and we have done spiritist retreats with like teenagers, but also young adults, or adults that are young and not so old, like myself, for example. And it is unbelievable the difference that it makes in their lives. But not only like as we experience, we do that very interactively in a like kind of summer camp setting. But this year's youth retreat, we had some staff camp, not non-spiritists, and doing activities, even fun activities, but based on the conversation of our youth. There were a couple occasions that people came to us and say, can we like learn? Like they felt the need. And I think nowadays we are in desperate need for consolation, direction, guidance. And spiritism is amazing. I'm just like passionate. Sorry if I talk too long, but anyway.
No, it's great because you said something, Nadia, that it's very, very important. As you know, I do research in the collective unconscious, in the anomalous experiences, and I hear a lot of podcasts, and with a lot of people from Europe, from the United States, especially now in the United States. I don't know if you've seen that Spielberg has launched a new movie. So people are really thinking from where we come, that we are not alone, and this and that. But people, I think something that is missing in the discussion, it's reincarnation, right? So spiritist knowledge is fundamental to understand, because it's not only seeing each other as separate here in the world, in different countries or cultures, but also Joanna is asking us to pay attention and to understand that we are heading towards cosmic consciousness. So who knows where we have reincarnated? Do we think we have only reincarnated on Earth, for instance, or only in this body, or Homo sapiens and this and that? We don't know. Some of us could have been in other worlds, or. So, and talking about Chico Xavier, I don't know if there is translation to English, okay? But I think I don't know if it's the second or the first book, is that he wrote when he was like, Thiago was saying, he was, I think, 20 something, that he wrote, he psychographed his own mother, the first one, the biological mother. And in this book, Letters from a Dead from a dead person, it would be the translation for his dead mother, let's say. Um, so the book that he psychographed, she talks about in spiritual realms going and visiting other worlds. I'm not going to say which planets she has been because many, I don't want to give spoilers, but she has been to other planets and she describes. So it's a shame that many of the of spiritist books and Chico Xavier and even Divaldo's are not translated because the discussion would be, it's much more complex than, oh, who is there a green man or not? Where do we come from? This kind of stuff, because the reality of the spirit is much more complex. But even if we are talking about this cosmos, are we talking about the material cosmos that our science that we think it's so great, but we can even understand yet totally quantum physics, for instance. We don't even have already a quantum computer, for instance. We are trying to develop, and it's going to change everything. Artificial intelligence is in the beginning. You have always to go there and see if it hasn't said some silly thing, because sometimes it says silly things, right? So it's all this technology is just to help us, but it's not the end of the thing, right? And it's only material if we're talking about our material science. But even our material science is not enough anymore because it cannot explain the complexity of our own psyche, for instance. Nowadays, in psychology and psychiatry, we are studying the consciousness. What is consciousness? Right? What ontologically is consciousness? So, in spiritist knowledge and light teachers such as Joanna had a lot to bring to the discussion. But so each one of us that are studying, we have a responsibility not to fall, all this noise, because it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of, oh, we are this and that, but lacking him, being humble, as you said, Nadia. We don't know everything. We are, like children, spiritualists are talking in front of the cosmos and what we call God or the source. So we should be very humble. We should understand that we have a lot of potential within us. Thank you so much, Nadia. Let's keep the focus that reincarnation studying and really studying the spirit. That is the proposal of Allan Kardec when he asks the spirits, and of course, all the spirits that were sending all these teachings through him and through the other mediums. It's just the start of the understanding of who we really are, and not evolve how many extraterrestrial species there are. I think it's really cool because I'm a tracker. I would love to. Oh, this and that it's reality. It's not science fiction. But what's I think it's much more interesting and awesome, it's to understand our own complexity and our travel through existence and evolution. Hi, Anne. Great that you are here.
Apologies that I was late. I had another commitment
Brother.
delayed me. But one thing that when you're talking is coming to my mind is reminding me of the time when, in the 19th century, when the spiritual, all the mediumistic phenomena invaded the earth, and there was a big noise, and there was a lot of going on, and people wanting to see the phenomena and all this blah blah blah, and from that the spiritist teachings came out and other similar kind of things, but there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of show, there was a lot of fraud, there was a lot of now we know it all, blah blah blah. And I think that the conversation about the ETs and things is a little bit similar, because now suddenly
Yeah.
all this information is coming in, a lot of noise, and people doing a lot of spectacles and revelations and this and that. So there will be something of truth that we can incorporate, but there also be a lot of the like what we're calling noise. So I think it's important for us as spirits in evolution that we all are, that we maintain our balance, that we look at everything, analyze it, see if it fits, if it doesn't fit, and follow that process and not get overexcited. Just in the same way that people in the 19th century, some people got very overexcited with dancing tables, but they made no difference to their lives ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is where I'm coming from. So to know or not to know about ETs or people from other dimensions, how does this help me? What difference does it
Yes.
make to my life? So that I don't
Yes.
get distracted from what I'm trying to do
Yes.
in terms of bringing myself together and awakening my understanding about myself and my place in the universe. So I just found a parallel, which I thought was a bit interesting, that all these years later, it's a repeat phenomena in a different time, and I don't know. That's what I just thought I'd share that.
I think it's great, and because I think exactly as you do. And I don't know why Chico Xavier is so much in my head, but because actually he was the first spiritual leader to talk in TV. But unfortunately, because of the English, nobody in outside of Brazil knows about that. But to say that in the future we were going to understand that we are not the only humankind or something like that, or created by the source, by God. But also, I wanted to remind you that there is a small movie, maybe Fabrizio can put, but well, nowadays YouTube has translation to everything. That Chico was very, very ill in the hospital, and there was I think maybe we have talked about that in previous meetings, but there was a TV, the major TV in Brazil was outside of the hospital filming all the time. And then when people saw and the TV saw the film, they saw lights, kind of balls of lights, going inside the room where the window and the bedroom where Chico Xavier was in the hospital. And it's the national TV for all Brazilians who were watching, because he was a person that was very important in Brazil, very recognized for the charitable work beside that he did, besides being a spiritist. But then people asked him, "Oh, who was that? Or what was that?" Because we saw, and he said, "Oh, it was Emmanuel and my mother who came to visit me." So when people talk about, for him it was okay. Talk about lights in the sky, we don't know. We don't know about what we are talking about, or maybe because our consciousness collectively is because it's a transition to a more developed world that we are going through, in developed consciousness. Maybe we are also being able, or some perceptions are opening, that we are being able to see, let's say, more of this anomalous phenomena they're talking about, UAPs, unidentified rare anomalous phenomena. But and some of them could be even projections, as Jung says, of our inner world, like the self. But we can talk about that later, because this goes on and on. But all this psychological and spiritual knowledge and possibilities, and I think all this blah blah blah, as you said, all this noise, they don't go deeper in, because they don't listen to each other. Everybody wants to have the truth. And even leaders, because they are going to use as source of power, of course, this kind of information. But since we are in this transition, I do believe that we will do exactly as you say, as it happened in, for instance, in the UK. like with, for instance, people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, right, that organize a lot of groups to study really. And then we are going to change all this noise goes down and we connect to something bigger. And as you said, then spiritist and spiritualist knowledge come and a lot of people reconnect. Yeah, I totally agree. And thanks so much. Nice to see you after some time. Sylvia, you want to say something before we go back to the PowerPoint?
Yes, sort of briefly, talking about uh, reincarnation, as you're saying, I think this is a very important point because I remember some time ago here in England, they did a research and was more than 45% of the people actually accept the idea of reincarnation. And I think one of the important things is that in Spiritism, the way the spirits teach us is completely different from every other way that other religions, including, accept the idea of reincarnation, because in Spiritism, it's always a progressive thing. We will never go to reincarnate as an animal. I think metempsychosis, I think, is called. So this is very important because a lot of people think of reincarnation as a punishment, and then you're going to come back as an animal. And in spiritism, we learn that that's not true. We are always going to be reincarnated as a human being. And also the myriads of is not only punishment, even sometimes someone who was reincarnated in quite a severe deformed body, sometimes is a spirit of great light that's coming back to teach, to help other people. Of course, most are people who have problems in the past. But I think one of the most important things that we learn in Spiritism is that nothing, absolutely nothing, is written in stone. Every case is judged by its own merit. And I think that's one of the most precious things we have in Spiritism. And going back to the text as well, about suffering and the meaning of suffering, I have actually, I'm going to read, I have two quotes from Nietzsche that he says, to live is to suffer, and to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. That's
Yeah,
almost what
cool.
Joanna is saying. If you
Yeah.
find the meaning to suffering, you can survive it. And then he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. So it goes back to the same thing. If you know why you're living and what's the purpose of life, you can survive it. And that's the meaning of it. And just another thing very quick, he says, we love life, not because we are used to living, but because we are used to loving. I love Nietzsche. I know people say he didn't talk about God, but and we always have um, he said you needed to have chaos inside yourself to give birth to a dancing star. This is a quotation from Marcus Prague Zarathustra. He had wonderful books. And I think that's exactly what Joanna talks about meaning. You know why you
Yeah.
suffer, then you can bear it. And,
Yeah.
just that point.
Thank you, Sylvia. Actually, Nietzsche was talking about the death of God, the old God, because God, like an Imago Dei, is changing and it's it's having a rebirth inside ourselves and more, understanding more about God. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say before going to the PowerPoint, I kind of kept what's the name of the psychiatry, because sometimes people want to go there and study. Many of you already know, but the most prominent psychiatrist who studied reincarnation was Dr. Jan Stevenson, who passed away in 2007, as the former chair of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. And he spent 40 years investigating over 2,500 cases of young children claiming to remain past lives. Beautiful research. So we should go back to the PowerPoint, right? I just start sharing again. And I'll go a little quicker because our discussion is so great, but we still have some and now few time to. So back to Joanna, and I know all of you have the text, so you can go and take a quick look later. But just say that when Joanna talks in this chapter about excessive ambitions, she says that the archetypal images of pleasure, atavisms, ancient things, and behaviors and experiences that stay with us through different incarnations because we have not already processed them or learned with them. So the archetype, they form archetypes also that we all share. The archetypal images of pleasure, which arise and remain in the innermost being of every individual, are responsible for what has conventionally been called the attainment of objective values. Hedonistic education, as Tiago was saying, from an early age trains the learner to develop the ability not to be deceived, guiding them towards objectives that provide the means to succeed in the social arena. Aspirations are directed by parents and educators who determine which activities are profitable, which undertakings are lucrative. The social mechanisms that lead to power and prominence within the community, pushing those still information into senseless contest. Not knowing the past of these spirits, as we were discussing, they distort the purposes of their physical rebirth, imposing upon them through culture and conditioned behavior the pursuit of what may satisfy temporal needs and appease inflamed desires. So we were talking about that, and that's one of the ways, of course, and for sure, to develop mental illnesses, for instance, anxieties, depressions, right? At the same time, the doors of libido are opened prematurely through sexual, and here Joanna is talking about the sexual libido, are opened prematurely through sexual experience before psychological maturity, generating various conflicts that become engraved in the innermost layers of the being, giving rise to disturbances and afflictions. Experiencing only the physical expression, these unskilled educators instill in their learners a predominant need to value ambition as a means of achieving social goals at any cost, even when this gives rise to inner turmoil and conflict of conscience. They believe they can suppress discernment, directing it towards a single path, power, which dazes them or leaves them unhappy once attained, thus enclosing within this fanciful proposition the very sense and meaning of existence. So the sense and meaning of existence is for these people and for this kind of education becomes power, having power. And remember, people, the opposite of love is not hate. Hate is love, is the sickness of love. The opposite of love is power. If I want power, this temporal power, this power that dominates the other, where the other is nothing but a means to an end, then I'm in total darkness. Then I am in the energy of something that it's antichrist, in a sense, against what the Christ taught and all other, of course, beautiful and light teachers about love and about what makes us evolve and what makes us, go towards the source and the light. So Jonah says the biological phenomenon is irreversible, and all who are born will die for this material life, leaving behind the shell that served their purposes during the span for which it was destined. The frenzied ambition to preserve youth through implants, surgeries, hormones, and bizarre methods. If Joanna, of course, she can see that the methods got much more bizarre nowadays. This she was talking about 25 years ago about that. Only to the futility of life, which loses its meaning when the trivial goal is not achieved. A goal that turns into a merciless executioner because we are not going to get younger. We need to get old, and you are going to see why. The gods of a single day, I love this sentence, the gods of a single day soon fall from their thrones, yielding place to others who replace them, vanishing into the shadows of torments that overcome some and subject them to process of incomparable despair. Pay attention to this and go back again, freeze, the PowerPoint when you are watching it and look at this beautiful, beautiful teaching by Joanna. The human being must learn to be happy in accordance with circumstances, internalizing and living the understanding of their physical transience and their spiritual eternity. In youth, vision is often distorted by psychological immaturity, by the dazzle and intensity of hormones, of course, and the sense of life presents itself in a way that does not correspond to reality, ultimate reality. Only later, when maturity and old age take hold of the emotional and organic structures, does one acquire a true understanding of the existential meaning. So that's why we need to get old. It's a blessing to get old. The day will be marvelous when the meaning of life can be shared, encouraging those at the beginning of their human experiences to discover, each according to their own emotions, what will bring them the greatest good and the most rewarding fulfillment. Thus, many neurotic manifestations will be avoided, especially those arising from existential emptiness or from the frustration of unfulfilled boundless ambitions without end. And this part of the chapter is beautiful when she talks about afflictions of possession and non-possession, but I don't think we will have time because we want to discuss a little bit more. So I just go slowly so then you can, when you go and watch, you can stop, okay? And I'll put the PowerPoint presentation in the WhatsApp group so all of you can see. It's a summary of what Joanna talks here. But just to understand that she's talking about Plato's, she's talking about the Stoics. It's really great the way that she talks about the philosophy of the way that we understand possession and non-possession, but she's talking about Plato's thought of the spirits originating from the world of ideas and going back to this world, and the ethical and moral implications of that, okay? And then also Joanna says that to reach the conscious self and uncover the essential purpose of existence becomes a preventive form of psychotherapy. Okay, so this is very, very important because it changes the way our vision of ourselves, of the world, and the meaning and the purpose of our lives. I'm just going slowly so that you can. And then she talks about, this is beautiful, and we are in the end, encounter with the self, capital S. And then she says that the renewed psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung defined the self as the totality of the conscious and unconscious psyche. But here, just to make it clear, for Jung, the self is both the totality of the psyche and also the self, capital S, the imago Dei, okay, the archetype of unity and totality in our psyche, both meanings, okay. So Joanna says the renowned psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung defined the self as the totality of the conscious and unconscious psyche, adding that this totality transcends our perception because, insofar as the unconscious exists, it cannot be defined. Its existence is merely a postulate, and nothing at all can be said about its possible contents. This is Jung. But as we say, Jung wrote the letter, but he didn't deliver it. So Joanna is delivering the letter. And then Joanna says, if we consider the self, capital S, as the immortal spirit that precedes conception and survives carnal dissolution, we will have in the deep deposits of its semi-material envelope, which is the perispirit, as Spiritist knowledge tells us, the mere postulate, as Jung said, that is the personal unconscious, in which are archived the ancestral experiences resulting from all reincarnations throughout the evolutionary process to which it is subjected. So in the perispirit, where Jung, because Jung didn't want to talk about the spirit only as as an archetype, but because he wanted to say he was looking at the psyche in psychological terms, and it's okay. But Joanna goes beyond that. She doesn't have these worries that Jung had. So she's saying, yes, the self is the spirit, and in the semi-material envelope of the spirit, the perispirit, when we are here incarnated and in the nearest dimensions, of course, of this experience, of this material dimension, there in the perispirit, we have the personal unconscious, this what Jung called the mere postulate, okay, and in which are archived the ancestral experiences of all reincarnations that we had, okay, throughout the our evolutionary process. This archetype, the original image, our imago Dei, the self, capital S, which is present in the human beings and endows them with the breath of both consciousness and unconsciousness, encompassing their entirety, originates, look how beautiful. So the self, our spirit, originates from the primordial archetype, the cosmic consciousness, God, or absolute causality. I think this is beautiful, beautiful. I get goosebumps. I don't know about you guys, but I get goosebumps when I read sentences like that. So every activity of the human being, whether conscious or not, must be directed, of course, towards the perfect realization of the self, integrating the psychic contents remaining from past memories, fragments of previous incarnations embedded in the personal unconscious, with the ego. So we have to integrate everything so that one's search may be for that primordial archetype, thereby attaining a cosmic harmonization which must necessarily constitute the inevitability of the evolutionary process. Okay, here, the people, that's the meaning of we are searching for the meaning. Joanna is saying that's the meaning, right? We need to integrate all of our experiences with the ego as much as we can in this experience, so that one search may be for that primordial archetype, right? Don't we want that to attain a cosmic harmonization, which must necessarily constitute the inevitability of the evolutionary process? In this journey of integrating psychic contents with the reality of the self, ethical values stand out by proposing the balance of being, which frees itself from disturbing fixations that give rise to neurotic disorders, as well as from the conflicts stemming from mistakes committed, which then impose themselves as reparative needs in the form of disorders of varying degrees. Self awareness affirms itself as one discovers the essential purpose of human existence, which is self identification, recognizing all the values that lie dormant within, awaiting the unfolding of possibilities to make them vibrant and fully engaged in life. The conflicting residues then gradually give way to emotional health, replaced little by little by the steadiness of behavior, by ennobling accomplishments, by the overcoming of mental torment as well as guilt, allowing oneself to grow without boundaries or limits, to explore the entire unconscious potential that lies neglected, despite carrying within it immeasurable treasures, and not merely the anxieties and disturbances that periodically resurface in the form of imbalance. Okay, so our unconscious, as Jonah and Jung says, is a source of health, and not only like Freud thought of contents that the ego rejects and the source of neurosis and disease, but Joanna is explaining why is a source of health. Please go back and take a look, and pay very much attention and meditate on what Joanna is talking about. The habit of reflection and examination of spiritual content arising from different eras of thought become valuable contributions to the awakening of the self, which transcends the formal automatisms to which it was compelled, thus enabling right action and awareness in the various endeavors that pertain to it. If by chance some disturbance momentarily clouds the clarity of the person's discernment, she understands that it is a troubling inherence that must be overcome. I will let this, and you please go back, okay? She's talking about neurotic assaults, but so that we can finish on time. And then no one passes through existence without these troubling inheritances, which lie within the very essence of being. In spite of this, the awareness of the self helps one to face the apparent obstacles, engraving new value that will gradually unfold, reclaiming the spaces once occupied by groundless fears and surmountable guilt. Then she talks about phobias, anxieties. You go back here. And then let's go ahead. This wholesome recognition of the values of the self and the perfect integration within it constitute one of the beatitudes, the one that grants man earthly happiness, a prelude to the spiritual life that awaits him. And then ending with Jung, we had already talked about this sentence, but I thought I should bring back to you Jung saying in the seminar given in 1930, for what is more precious than life to a living creature? If one lives only a half or a third of life, what is the use of living? Life only has meaning when it is really lived. Otherwise, it is like a pear tree that blossoms every spring and never brings forth a pear. You remember Christ himself condemned that which bears no fruit when he cursed the barren fig tree. People who live sterile lives are like that fig tree. They do not fulfill the will of the Lord. If they want to live, they must live with the whole of their being. So now I'll stop sharing. Fabrizio, back to you.
Thank you, Anahy. We might extend maybe 5 to 10 minutes just to hear any comments or any insights from anyone who want to share their comments, please, before we wrap it up. Severina, over to you.
Just want to add, as we were talking about the artificial intelligence, that we've got now a carded boot. So if you type GPT
Uh,
chat carded
Severina,
boot,
can you go closer to your speaker? We can't hear you
yes,
clearly again.
uh, I'm just saying that we've got carded boot in GTP chat now.
Mm.
So you can do studies and you use AI. There is carded book designed by Vanessa Saloni. I say in the chat.
So, did you say there is a book written by Xavier that you heard this discussion with Vanessa and Salona? Sorry, we couldn't hear you properly.
Type in on the chat. Okay.
Okay. I read it out. Sylvia?
No, it's just thinking about what you're talking about extraterrestrials and that kind of thing. There is a very interesting book called A História de Sonho, The Story of a Dream, by Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, that he talks about an incarnation he had in Venus, which is a planet still more backward than the Earth, you know, which is a surprise because the people used to say it's more, but it's a very, very interesting. And that book is said about the Carta de uma Morta, about his mother talking about all the places she visited. And I think a lot of, I mean, you know, I'm a Star Trekker. I adore them. I love being in the other planet. But it's interesting because I think now there is more opening because people is beginning to accept that we are not the only beings on Earth. I think it's part of the progress. I mean, there's still people who don't, but I mean, in you know, only in a galaxy there's 4 billion stars and I don't know how many trillions planets. Just life on Earth is completely an absurd, you know. So I think people are beginning to understand that as well. It's part of the progress and the change of a planet, isn't it? So one day, Chico said that originally people, extraterrestrials, used to live side by side with people from the Earth, and then they, you know, they had to go. But I think this is all part of the progress of humanity, really.
Sylvia, someone is asking you, can you repeat the name of the book again, please?
What is it for me?
Someone is asking if you can repeat the name of the book, please.
A História de Sonho. It's you can get it on PDF, you know, online. I think it's not even published anymore, but you can get it on the internet. A História de Sonho, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. It's his memory of having a life in another planet,
Thank you, Sylvia. Anna Sinclair?
in Venus, actually.
Yeah, so I think that everything it has its time, and each one of us has our own time. And even in an incarnation, we have our own time. Like saying, like when you come to old age, like myself, the material life slows down, and you can dedicate more time to to meditating and looking back and thinking about things in a more contemplative way as a natural way. And one of the things that just taking myself as an example, like when I look at myself as a young person, I was not interested at all in the meaning of life, what's in the stars. I was interested in the boy sitting next to me at the school. Are we going to the cinema? This is my life as a teenager, as a young person. I was very focused on what was the material life around me in a very natural way. And so if somebody came and provoked me, say, "Oh, but the stars," I said, they're far away. They are not meaningful for me at that stage. You think about like philosophy of life. What are you talking about? Just want to have fun, and pass my exams, do what I can. So I look at myself as a younger person with compassion because we have our times. And there is like, always say, the spirits say this, okay, we got a closed rose. You can't force it open. It needs the sun, it needs the nutrients, it needs the humidity, whatever, for it to slowly open up. If you try to open it with your hands, you will break it. So we are like that as well. The knowledge is coming. I have been exposed to Jonas' knowledge for 30 years. I was like, it was not connecting with me for 30 years, to be honest, because I was not ready. The rose was closed. Now the rose begins to open a little bit. Some things start fitting, and I'm so surprised. I say, "Oh, look at that. That's great. Oh, how interesting. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow." So when I say that, is because all these journeys, I think, are very individual. And sometimes people feel very motivated to impose it on others, on their relatives, on their partners, on their friends. Like, you can't do that. It's your transformation, your opening of your rose that will share the perfume that will potentially motivate others. And that for me is really quite important because sometimes you can feel overwhelmed by so much information, so many things, and where do I fit in all this? So I just wanted to say that we take it step by step. Evolution is unavoidable. We contribute to it if we want. We go faster, we go smoother, but it all has its time. And like saying the good spirits, God, everything, they are like kind parents looking at a child learning to walk. You give it the time it needs to find its balance, to find its equilibrium, its ability to move. So I just wanted to say that because that's what was on my mind, linking to this study today, which is fascinating.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think it's perfect what you said, right, Fabricio? What Anne said, because it's exactly that. I love the image of a flower that it's going to open when the circumstances and it is actually the own flower is ready to open. I just want to add that maybe because of the time that we are in, it happened to me the same thing as you, as with you, and until my almost 30 years of age, I was doing other stuff and medical school and this and that, and didn't have, the opening. I knew things because, of course, in Brazil, it's almost impossible for you not to hear and study a little bit of this and that, or actually not study, but see and read a little bit. But it didn't make exactly sense, and I would question a lot of things. And I can even tell you guys that sometimes when I think, well, but I was Chico Xavier, I think he died in 2002, something like that. And I was young and a young adult, and I could have gone there to Beraba to meet him. And I kept thinking when I started reading, and connecting to Spiritist knowledge, why didn't I go? And nowadays, I'm happy that I didn't go. And and everybody else, because I wouldn't be able, maybe I would criticize, or I wouldn't be able to connect. I wasn't ready, as you said, to connect with him. I would, be only look to him only superficially, maybe because I was young and so, full of ideas from the ego and from trying to adjust to the world and to friends and opinions. So I totally agree with you. I'm happy I didn't go because I prefer to have contact with him with older that we can give all the attention and be so thankful, right, Fabrizio, and grateful for all that they have done to us. Not only Chico Divaldo and other mediums, even in England or in many parts of the world, but the mentors and the light teachers that talk through them. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much, Fabrizio.
Thank you. So I'm gonna end the recording, and just before we all go, I'm gonna invite Sylvia to do a closing prayer for us. Sylvia, would that be okay for you to do a closing prayer for us? And for everyone who's been listening to us, thank you for being with us, and I see you soon.